Before the Ages of Man, by Akatosh of Chimerine, chronicles the major events of the Dawn and Malefic eras. Timeline Series, Volume 1. Before man came to rule Tamriel, and before the chronicles of the historians recorded the affairs of the rulers of Tamriel, the events of our world are known only through myths and legends, and through the divinely inspired teachings of the 9 divines. For convenience, historians divide the distant ages of prehistory into 2 broad periods of time, the Dawn Era and the Malefic Era. The Dawn Era. The Dawn Era is that period before the beginning of mortal time, when the feats of the gods take place. The Dawn Era ends with the exodus of the gods and magic from the world at the founding of the Admantine-tower. The term Malefic comes from the Nordic, literally, era of the elves. The Malefic era is the prehistoric time after the exodus of the gods and magic from the world at the founding of the Adamantine-tower and before the arrival of ysgramor, the Nord in Tamriel. The following are the most notable events of the Dawn era, presented roughly in sequence as it must be understood by creatures of time such as ourselves. The cosmos, formed from the Aubis, chaos or totality, by Anu and Padme. Akatosh, or Riel, formed and time began. The gods, et Ada, formed. Lorkhan convinced or tricked the gods into creating the mortal plane, Nirn. The mortal plane was at this point highly magical and dangerous, as the gods walked. The physical makeup of the mortal plane, and even the timeless continuity of existence itself, became unstable. When magic, Magnus, architect of the plans for the mortal world, decided to terminate the project, the gods convened at the Adamantine-tower, Redaynia, the oldest known structure in Tamriel, and decided what to do. Most left when magic did. Others sacrificed themselves into other forms so that they might stay, the ehlnofey. Lorkhan was condemned by the gods to exile in the mortal realms, and his heart was torn out and cast from the tower. Where it landed, a volcano formed, with magic, in the mythic sense, gone. The cosmos stabilized. Elven history, finally linear, began ME 2500. The Malefic Era. The Malefic Era was figured by early Nord scholars as a series of years numbered in reverse order backward from the beginning of time. The founding of the Cameron dynasty, recorded as year 0 of the first era. The prehistoric events of the Malefic Era are listed here with their traditional Nordic Malefic dates. The earliest Malefic date cited by King Harold's scholars was ME 2500. The Nordic reckoning of the first year of time. As such, the Malefic Era extends from ME 2500 in the distant past to ME 1, the year before the founding of the Cameron dynasty and the establishment of the White Gold Tower as an independent city-state. According to King Harold's bards, ME 2500 was the date of construction of the Adamantine Tower on Bal Fell Island in High Rock, the oldest known structure of Tamriel. This corresponds roughly to the earliest historical dates given in various unpublished Elvish chronicles. During the early Malefic era, the aboriginal beast peoples of Tamriel, the ancestors of the Khajiit, Argonian, Orcish, and other beast folk, lived in pre-literate communities throughout Tamriel. In the middle Malefic era, the Altmeri, mortals of elven origin, refugees left their doomed and now lost continent of Altmeris, also known as Old Ehlnofey, and settled in southwestern Tamriel. The first colonies were distributed at wide intervals on islands along the entire coast of Tamriel. Later inland settlements were founded primarily in fertile lowlands in southwest and central Tamriel, wherever the beast folk encountered the elves. The sophisticated, literate, technologically advanced Altmeri cultures displaced the primitive beast folk into the jungles, marshes, mountains, and wastelands. The Adamantine Tower was rediscovered and captured by the Dureni, a prominent and powerful Altmeri clan. The Crystal Tower was built on Somerset Isle and, later, White Gold Tower in Cyrodiil. During the Middle Merefic era, Aldmeri explorers mapped the coasts of Vvardenfell, building the first era High Elven wizard towers at Ald Redaynia, Bal Fell, Tel Aruhn, and Tel Mora in Morrowind. It was also during this period that Ayleid, Wild Elven, settlements flourished in the jungles surrounding White Gold Tower, present-day Cyrodiil. Wild Elves, also known as the Heartland High Elves, preserved the Dawn-era magics and language of the ehlnofey, ostensibly a tribute land to the High King of Alinor. The Heartland's long lines of communication from the Somerset Isle sovereignty effectively isolated Cyrodiil from the High Kings at Crystaltower. The late Middle Merefic era is the period of the High Velothi culture. The chimer, ancestors of the modern Dunmer, or Dark Elves, were dynamic, ambitious, long-lived elven clans devoted to the fundamentalist ancestor worship. The chimer clans followed the prophet Veloth out of the ancestral elven homelands in the southwest to settle in the lands now known as Morrowind. Despising the secular culture and profane practices of the Dwemer, the chimer also coveted the lands and resources of the Dwemer, and for centuries provoked them with minor raids and territorial disputes. The Dwemer, dwarves, free-thinking, reclusive elven clans devoted to the secrets of science, engineering, and alchemy established underground cities and communities in the mountain range, later the Velothi Mountains, separating modern Skyrim and Morrowind. The late Merefic era marks the precipitous decline of Velothi culture. Some Velothi settled in villages near declining and abandoned ancient Velothi towers. During this period, Velothi high culture disappeared on Vvardenfell Island. The earliest Dwemer freehold colonies date from this period. Degenerate Velothi devolved into tribal cultures which, in time, evolved into the modern Great Houses of Morrowind, or persisted as the barbarian Ashlander tribes. The only surviving traces of this tribal culture are scattered Velothi towers and Ashlander nomads on Vvardenfell Island. The original First Era High Elven Wizard towers along the coast of Tamriel were also abandoned about this time. It was in the late Merefic era that the pre-literate humans, the so-called Nedic peoples, from the continent of Atmora, also known as Altmora or the Elderwood, in Aldmeris, migrated and settled in northern Tamriel. The Nord culture hero, ysgramor, leader of a great colonizing fleet to Tamriel, is credited with developing a runic transcription of Nord speech based on Elvish principles, and so ysgramor is considered the first human historian. Ysgramor's fleet landed at Cyric Head, at the extreme northern tip of Skyrim's Broken Cape. The Nords built there the legendary city of Sarfal. The elves drove the men away during the Night of Tears, but ysgramor soon returned with his 500 companions. Also during the late Merefic era, the legendary immortal hero, warrior, sorcerer, and king, variously known as Pelinalwhitestrake, Harald Harrybreeks, Ysmir, Hans the Fox, etc., wandered Tamriel, gathering armies, conquering lands, ruling, then abandoning his kingdoms to wander again.